Welcome to another gardening vlog. This is a tough one because lack of rain, not being able to plant plants in the ground, and just trying to keep plants in the pots and in the ground, keep them from just dehydrating and dying. So I hoped last video that I'd be putting stuff in the ground, but I don't even know if in this video we will. Are we going to make this vlog like a week, 2 weeks long? Because next week we're expecting up to 58% chance of rain with like 3-4 days of 40 to 50% chance. I hope that we get some rain for sure. But are we going to make this garden vlog, 2 weeks long, before we release it? Or do we just focus on something else? In times like these, it seems like it would be nice if we would have had better mulching practices on all of our plants, at least all the ones in the ground. We know there are many benefits to mulching, including moisture retention around the roots and stuff of plants and trees. Plus, some weed control, some level. Even though when we did those rose garden with that big old layer of mulch, we still got grass and weeds everywhere. But you may just have to be more vigilant and do thicker layers or add layers and pull weeds as they come up until you have everything where there's minimal labor involved. We know that over time, wood chips, mulch, pine needles, whatever is going to break down and act sort of like a compost, slowly feeding that nitrogen and other components into the soil, into their root systems. And also that mycorrhizal protection. Even mulching, I promise you, the reason why mulching helps isn't just for one or two things. It's for that mycorrhizal protection in a lot of cases. And I've said this before, but mulching is kind of like a light version of doing these aged wood chip raised beds. So when you do the raised beds, you may have a 10-inch layer, 8-inch layer, whatever, maybe even a 2-foot layer of all of these organic things breaking down, hopefully mixed woods, mixed leaves, pine needles, and everything. So each one can harbor different types of hopefully beneficial fungal growth. And certain types of mycorrhizal fungi has a symbiotic relationship to certain types of trees. So the more different types of materials you have, the higher chance you're going to have of it protecting something like those avocados and other plants. And of course, I've probably talked about that several times over the last couple seasons, but right now I would just like to have that protection against the drought, just moisture retention. That in itself, right this minute, right this month, week, would be the most important. So much of our garden vlog has been taken up by weather, by drought, by flooding, by cold weather. We spent, that one winter just freaking constantly taking plants in and out, in and out, in and out. And that just took so much of our attention. And videoing it definitely took more attention as well. So I don't think it's a good idea to just repeat that. And this is another reason why we're probably going to end this before super cold weather comes. But as I've said before, we doesn't mean we're going to stop entirely. We may do an in-between, whatever, between season, what is it, season 3 now? Season 3 and season 4. Or we may just do some little updates, pop-up updates about things. Or we can just start fresh on the next season and give you all the updates just all at once. Well, it's the next day, and I thought that I was done gathering like milk jugs and stuff to water the plants, but it does give me spot watering, precision watering versus wasting a lot of water. I can put it right there in those roots and these little pots and stuff, or in the ground for new plantings. But these guys really don't last long outside. The UV, the sun just makes them dry rot. So I guess I'm going to have to save 2 or 3 extra ones here. We did get some rain last night. Just a little sprinkle, maybe for, I don't know how long, 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours. So things are still droopy looking. They may be a little less droopy, but it's not even the hottest part of the day. It's still early in the morning. So we'll see what happens. We'll just talk for a few minutes and in this garden vlog. One of the things I sometimes talk about is permaculture versus pediculture. Pediculture being, planting your grass that does nothing for you and just getting your pesticide company to come spray it and getting your fertilizer in and refilling your spots that get yellow or whatever, and getting grass plugs and doing all that maintenance and stuff, and putting irrigation systems out there just to water your grass that has no purpose, and to keep everything nice and cut low, and your edges trimmed and everything weed eated, and like going to the barber shop and getting, a crew cut or something. This is the next morning. I had to scrap a lot of video we did because chaos interrupted and, erupted, and just hell broke loose. Kids and everybody needing stuff, and, it just took away from the video I was doing. So hopefully we can finish it this time. Today is the first day of fall, I believe. So you guys will know what I'm talking about. You'll say, what's the date that they're filming? So 69 or so degrees tonight. 91 of the high today, supposedly, with a chance of thunderstorms. But more on to the closing subject. Hopefully thunderstorms, saturation in the ground, level of moisture, so we can plant on the next garden vlog or two. But pediculture versus permaculture, I should say permaculture before pediculture. If you're wherever you're at, a city code enforcement, county code enforcement, HOA, whatever you live in allows you to do that. Sometimes the front yard you have to pediculture, and sometimes they give you freedom in the backyard to garden and do stuff like that. And we've already started setting the groundwork for a lot of these raised beds and other permaculture practices, where, like I said, not everywhere you're going to be able to just chop and drop limbs and leaves and piles of stuff and make aged wood chip raised beds or the alternative beds like we use. But making these wood chip beds, or when you're framing out stuff with logs of different sizes and lengths and all that stuff, you have sticks kind of coming in and out. It's not a perfect square or a perfect circle, so it's hard to mow around that unless you have a weed eater or something. And over time, as all of your organic materials compost down, and you, again, we talked about having to refill that organic material for a few years, or else that stuff will compact down to almost nothing, and then your roots will be stuck out like this, dried out, and your plants will be dying, falling down, or whatever. But once you get to that point, it's going to be easier to maintain because it'll probably be a smoother surface. Those logs that come out there, where your lawnmower would probably hit them, break a belt, bend your freaking blades up, tear your deck up. those will no longer be a problem because you're going to be working in a smoother surface area in 3 or 4 or 5 years. But until then, we have to start doing some of the pediculture around it to make these areas look better, make them more presentable for the public. If and I'm saying public not as in inviting the public in, but possibly doing future permaculture garden tours, or having inviting individuals to come see or whatever. Plus, it's going to make better video for our YouTube channel to be able to do wider shots and say, look, we're proud of our yard, the way it looks. We're proud of these permaculture practices, the way we're, putting everything together and making it work. A big portion of doing this pediculture is also not just, weed eating and making everything around the fences and the beds look better, but also getting more organized with our potted plants, our, potted seedlings, everything, our tools, finding a permanent or semi-permanent spot, one spot in the shade, one spot in the sun, sometimes moving them back and forth, but having more area to, have our driveways, to drive our lawnmowers, to walk and look. And, if we ever, invite people in to do permaculture tours or something, or individuals in just to check out the garden and, show them that, hey, look at here, this is another way you can do things. They would walk away and say, okay, there's not farm equipment here. There's not, logs and sticks everywhere, where they are working. On those beds, that's where the sticks and the leaves are, or they have a bin here to hold all the excess stuff, and they have everything else nice and trimmed and mowed. The trails look nice. So we need to start weed eating and getting everything organized. Also, we talked about this before, but we're going to be getting away from these big burn piles and probably doing little smaller burn barrels, so a lot of people really don't like that I utilize cardboard in so many ways, but we do not have a cardboard or plastic or anything recyclable center here. We're paying assessment fees and all kinds of stuff for these recyclable things, but they yanked that out of the program despite us paying these assessment fees for 35 plus years and saying it was only going to last X amount of years. I don't know if it was 5 or 7 years or what, but they kept charging us for these garbage assessments and these recyclable fees. They're not recycling. So what are we going to do with the cardboard? Plastic has to go in the landfill. We can reuse it like milk jugs or whatever until they dry rot and fall apart. They end up going to be in the landfill anyway. Cardboard, paper, making beds out of them, making a wood ash out of them, and some people even use like a wood ash in their ponds I think it fights algae and stuff. But, some of the boxes that we get, we get stuff from Amazon. Now we're getting stuff from the school programs, scholarship programs, boxes that we can reuse for storage. Big boxes we can lay flat for weed prevention and building those raised beds. But there's going to be a stopping point because we only have so much land to use and utilize these things. So we're always going to have an excess. We can give away the nice big boxes for people moving or using them for their garden, but there's a lot of little tiny ones and a little junky paper and everything else that no one is really going to want. And going and hauling it, 50 miles or whatever to another county probably isn't really an option. They may not even take it out of county recycling centers because we're not in the county where people pay those fees to, and they actually utilize the programs they're being paid for, So our local county would rather you just put it in a non-compostable trash bag, all that paper, cardboard, other recycled materials, and just bury it 30 foot deep, 20 foot deep, 15 foot deep, and have zero oxygen there to help it decompose better. So again, what's the lesser of two evils? The lesser of two evils is going to be to utilize cardboard and paper as much as you can through recycling it for yourself and for your other garden buddies, and potentially to burn it to make wood ash. I know it's lost us a few subscribers when we do those cardboard burns. I know it's got a few unlikes on those cardboard burn videos, but this is the reality of it. We're not going to lie. We're not going to just pretend this isn't an issue just because somebody doesn't like it, because we are opening up a lot about our lives in this YouTube channel, on this YouTube channel, I should say. We can do a lot more, though, than what we're doing, as long as we have time to do it. And, going back full force to this PEP program, we're not going to have as much time for the garden vlog or anything. But as my kids get older, they're going to have to take on some responsibilities in the garden center. And because we are doing, permaculture gardening, propagation and everything, incorporating that with our schooling, they're going to have, like I said, a bigger responsibility in the future of maintaining things, learning how to cut grass, learning how to do chop and drop and everything else. And just showing you one reason why this area has become sort of a place where it's semi-shade, semi-sun, that should be a driveway through our yard. And we've got so many weeds there and potted plants here, and then we move a few foot over, and this is a little bit more sun, so we kind of move it back and forth between this area, that area, and even a more shady area. But all this area here, and this is going to be our future patio. We're going to move stepping stones and stuff that way, and probably put a cover over our grill and everything and make it nice. But this is blocking our driveway. It's, we can't weed around it too easily. So yeah, we're going to show you even the bad stuff here. We need to make this nice, make it pretty, get these pots somewhere else where they're not going to cause problems, whether we have to put layers of cardboard down under them or if we have to put weed fabric somewhere else. We're just going to have to do it. We want the yard to look a little bit prettier, a little bit more presentable, so that, as I said, we can be proud when we do a wider shot in our video and in our pictures. We got a lot of work to do. It's not going to happen overnight. And weed eating is something we're going to have to do, whether we get one of those weed eater lawnmowers, like a push mower that has the weed eater thing on it, electric weed eater, or gas weed eater. And I've had such bad luck with gas things, from frickin' lawnmowers, to weed eaters, especially weed eaters. Never can keep them running for very long. So we may end up doing either the push weed eater and trying to have somebody maintain it, or try to learn mechanical stuff on it. And we are learning a lot of mechanical stuff by working on our last 2 or 3 lawnmowers. It sucks to keep constantly having to work on lawnmowers, though. And I don't know, maybe we'll just do electric weed eaters. And I hate weed eating, I'll be honest with you. I got a bad back, and despite that, I still have to do flooring and different things and construction projects and all kinds of building and mounting stuff and carrying heavy loads. But weed eating is not fun to me at all. I just have to learn to just take it and just do it and try not to complain about it, though. We want everything to come in, just slide into place where everything has it at least close to an equilibrium, I guess you would say. Unfortunately, our yard has a lot of ticks in it, so this push will hopefully help with ticks. You know, I wish we could have geese or guineas or something out here, but our German Shepherd, you know, just terrorized our last Muscovy duck, and we had to get rid of him. And I'm afraid she's not going to let us have anything like that. Guys, are y'all excited about your new school program?
Yeah.
You got, why is your face so dirty? Are you excited?
Show the cicada.
There's that little cicada. I don't know why it's not moving too much. Cats might have got it.
Yeah, the cat.
Moving a little bit. I can't believe you're holding him on your finger.
There we go. He flew off my hand really fast. He was just pretending to be dead, probably because he didn't want to get eaten. Well, when are we going to give more plants back to like the community on a big level, like the Jaboticabas doing raffles and maybe American persimmons and a variety of other things? Thing is, we are in areas where all the time where we could do that, but usually when we do it in a big way, oh, I'm already been hollered at. Hold on. And I'm back just like magic. I hope the chaos doesn't interrupt again and I have to kind of lose my train of thought while I'm ending this video. Where was I? I don't even know. We are in these areas quite frequently. Hard to get babysitters, yada yada. So, you know, 70, 80, 90% of the time, we don't have that extra, you know, 20, 30 minutes to gather the plants, take them there, come back when we're doing all these doctor's visits and, you know, appointments. So it'll happen, but it doesn't happen as frequently as I would like. With that being said, you know, we have the plants ready. It's going to happen. Just, is it going to be next week or 2 months from now?